Stacey Jimenez.
So we're excluding Carl Hess, so if you're watching on TV at home, Mr. Hess withdrew his application, if you're just joining us. And so we appreciate your submission and hope you'll reapply in the future if your schedule allows. Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Hi.
Good evening, Ms. Jimenez. How are you today?
I'm well.
Great. So question one. The questions are up there. I'm not sure why I continue to read them, but so they love the sound of my voice. I could tell that. Why have you applied to be on the Planning Commission, and what relevant experience do you have in land use, design, and or city planning that makes you a good candidate?
As far as my skills, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but I'm an attorney. And I think I have, as an attorney, the ability to really lend my services in terms of being able to read a large amount of data, to process that, to make decisions. I think I would be helpful with some of the legal issues that come before the commission. I'm also a property manager in San Francisco, and so every day I'm dealing with the city with their issues and guidelines and requirements. And I think I do, as a property manager, a lot of what the commission does, maybe on a smaller scale. I think you're always juggling what's good for the safety of the building's residents, and all the while you're kind of keeping up with the myriad of requirements that are given to you by the city. And you're doing that against the background of remembering that ultimately you have to really watch the long-term property value of the building and the economics of sort of all of that.
What qualities do you have that makes you believe that you will do a better job than the candidate seeking reappointment?
That is a tough question because, like I said, I'm so grateful for the time and the commitment that the two incumbents have given to our city. I'd like to see a commissioner, a commission that maybe might be a little bit more aggressive in pushing back and, asking some tough questions. And I know that the idea is, well, maybe that's not our job, but I think that is part of your job to ask some of those questions. You've got that whole Lincoln Center project where the commissioner spent several meetings talking about the parking structure and whether or not it made sense with the office space next to it. And I would have liked to have seen them really talk about the cars that are going in that office space and how they're going to get in and out of that office park. I think in a couple months it's going to look like the parking lot at Levi Stadium after a 49ers game. It's going to be crazy. And then I think the only comment that I will make about the incumbents is that you really just look at their applications. Mr. Williams put two of you and our city manager as his references. And Mr. Dykeman didn't even bother listing contact information for his. And that's okay. I don't know that it's a bad thing because you know who they are. You know what they do, and you know the decisions that they're going to make. But I think that it just speaks to this, I call it the Fab 15. There's 15 people in the city who really seem to do all the work.
I was hoping that this inference didn't come out, but I'm going to address it up front. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it. So you made a reference to the fact that a planning commissioner listed some of us as their references. So what was exactly the problem with that? Do you feel that that's an ethical problem? You feel it's a legal problem? You're an attorney. So
no, I don't know that I have a problem with it at all.
So why did you state it?
I stated it because it was the implication, I think, is that there's just this inner circle of the city, that you all know each other, you all work together, and I don't have a problem with that. Oh. But I think it just says that, look, it's just the same 15 people or the same dozen people doing the same thing, and I really would like to see, we have two opportunities. There's 6 of us, not 7. There's 6 of us here who are willing to kind of step up and take some leadership roles and to get more involved.
So where would the 15 come from?
Well, I think that, there's you, there's the current commission.
So you consider me an insider?
I would.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you obviously don't know our city very well. If you consider me an insider,
well, Mr. Perez, Mayor, you've done how many other things in the city?
I won an election by outspending every other candidate and getting my message out. And the people that are laughing in the audience, because they consider themselves, they know me. And I'm the last person they would consider an insider. But I apologize in advance.
No, and like I said, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Okay,
I just think that
Jean, have we vetted that issue sufficiently? Is there a problem with any council member listing, somebody listing a council member as a reference?
I don't think that was a reference. It was just asking to list people who knew you or knew your
So
qualifications.
is that a problem? Should any of us recuse ourselves today?
No, that's not. Those are not listed as recommendations. The way the question reads is list people who know you and know about you.
Okay. So I take exception to the reference, and in so much as you mentioned it and opened that door, being an attorney, it needed to be dealt with. I won't use that to prejudice my thoughts about your particular thing. I have a series of other questions I'd like to ask you, but I'm going to wait because maybe somebody will ask them.
In your, you said you manage property in San Francisco. So in that job, do you have an opportunity to review plans, or do you have an opportunity to review environmental reports?
All the time. I have 3 big projects right now. We're dealing with earthquake retrofits. So one of my properties, a good example, is it's 1 block from what's considered a liquefaction zone. So in putting this project together, I've had to really read up on, well, what is liquefaction? When were these reports done? Does it make sense that even though this property is only 1 block away from this zone, do I just ignore the extra requirements that I would have to consider if I was inside this zone? And my feeling is that, well, do I want to go the extra mile just in case these studies are off or within the percentages, and do that to keep the tenant safe? Or do I just simply breathe a sigh of relief that I don't have to have that extra added expense to these projects? And then every engineer has their own way and their own idea of how to do this, and then you have to kind of match that with what the city says. So yeah, I've had a lot of experience in looking at plans and environmental studies.
So do you know what an EIR is?
I'm sorry?
You know what an EIR is?
No, I don't. I've read it. No.
How many public meetings were held on the linking? I'm assuming you attended the linking part. You talked about the linking center.
I saw a few of them, and I read the minutes.
Okay. So how many public meetings were held on that project?
I don't know. I know
range.
that I looked at half a dozen.
Half a dozen. And in none of those meetings they talked about an EIR, which talks about the traffic mitigation impacts.
Not that I remember off the cuff.
Is it okay?
I'm sure.
I
I'm
don't
not
want to
saying
treat
that
it
they weren't. They don't exist. I'm sure they do. They would have had to have been.
But you said
Put in
before they
place.
didn't occur. You said they talked about.
I didn't see them talked about or discussed. I didn't see anyone. It just comes down to you've got 2,000 cars, and that's too many.
But you said they didn't look at it, so I was just curious. Either they
Sure.
didn't. Okay. So can you explain to me the land use process in Foster City Planning Commission?
I know it's a collaborative one. I can't speak any more than that.
You don't know what role anybody plays in it, how it occurs?
No.
So can you explain to me, that, and this is my last question I'm going to go over. Do you understand the difference between policy and recommendation?
I do.
Okay, so which body does policy and which policy does recommendations?
Policy. Commission does the recommendation.
Okay. So, and I think one of my council members answered this, because this is one I'm struggling with. So now you have a policy that we've adopted, and you understand that housing and development happens as a result of us.
I do.
So now when you sit on the commission, what is your role then? What is your role as a commissioner? Once we've set the policy, what is your proper role as you see it?
Sure. Well, I think we're working with developers. The commission is.
Are you a technician or are you a creator? Do you understand what I'm asking? In other words, you're giving a set of parameters. Are you a technician implementing those parameters, or are you creating different parameters?
Well, I'm not going to just sit here and say I'm a technician. No, I think
Okay.
that there's a certain amount of creativity and a certain amount of work that you can do.
That's enough for me. Thank you so much for your time. Moving on.
What do you think is the role of the Planning Commission in making decisions on what is or is not developed in Foster City?
I think what is or what's not developed in Foster City is really a city council program and rules and regulations that is set forth. But what is built in Foster City is really something that's associated with the planning department. We have a lot of, the planning commission. we have a lot of discussions and don't always come to an easy consensus about what can be built in a particular area. There's a lot of discussions that we have, and we build a consensus on what is the most appropriate thing that should be put in a particular location. That combined with all of the rules and regulations, I think the Planning Commission does a great job in figuring out how those decisions are made and how that works within our city.
A lot of emails we received, and I want to address this just to get it off my chest, there was a lot of cut and paste. And I understand how the world works. You get behind an issue, you take somebody's comments and you just add your name and you cut and paste in the technology world we live in. So I took the liberty to email some people and ask for their phone number. So I wanted to talk to them. When I got done with a 6-7 minute conversation, it wasn't a matter of seeing it my way. They had a different take than on their cut and paste. So that always troubles me that people have a problem separating fact from emotion. And I just want to always be sure that no matter what decision I make or support tonight or who, I look at it based on qualifications, what's right for the city, but it doesn't discount those that came forward. But it does discount when the message is don't reappoint somebody because I'm going to cut and paste this item when they don't really even know the people, which you've heard from the mayor and vice mayor, but they didn't even know what their jobs are. When I asked about planning commission, they couldn't articulate what their job was, and that troubles me because they're asking me, I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but they're asking me to make a decision based on something that they know nothing about. And some of the emails that I've received have, I don't want to say they've been threatening to me, but the tone has been, think long and hard about the decision you make for your future. Because I am up for re-election if I choose to run next year. But I made a promise to myself when I ran the first time that I'm going to do the best for the greatest good in Foster City. Not for one person or two people. I'm going to do for the greater good. Because that's, to me, is important. Otherwise, you would have 85 stop signs. You would have 3,000 signal lights. You'd have all the things that people want, the individuals want, and that is not good governance. So that's who I am, and that's how I make decisions.
Yeah, and
So if you thought we were done, we had a meeting at 5 o'clock. We're here now to this time, and now we got another meeting. It's another 3 hours. But I love you all, and I will continue to love you. Come have coffee with me. Congratulations to all the applicants, and congratulations to the ones that were reappointed. Doris is going to read the necessary stuff, and I'm going to go to the back cave.